Maneva na say ma PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV there osia dem yopo.
Honorable Hamza Suhini Esquire has also given explanation to the CJ's removal and how he himself finally commits himself. He also reacted to the illegality of Edu Wahin and his wife, which I want you to join me listening to what he said and the education he gave on law. This station still remains PENDREAM TV, the only channel that brings you the best and latest updates in politics. If you are new here, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, like and also share to other members to watch as well. Please do subscribe for more videos. Turn the notification bell on as well, as I've said earlier, so that you'll be notified in any updates that will be loaded onto the channel. Thank you. Your comments are most important to us as well. Please do send your view through our WhatsApp number, which is 0277-128-777, or drop your comments at the comment section. You can also join us on TikTok and Facebook as well. Thank you very much for being with us on this channel. God bless you. Without much ado, please join me listening to what he said and the education he has given. And I think with his explanation, the CJ has finally committed himself by leaking his letter to the president. I don't know your view per se. Please do leave your suggestion or your view under the comment section before logging out. Thank you.
I'm picking both from the graphic.com. The first one is Chief Justice Tokonu served with petitions for removal as President Mahama condemns leak. And the story is that Chief Justice Gertrude Tokonu has been served with copies of 3 petitions calling for her removal from office. She has been requested to submit a preliminary response to the petitions within 10 days. Meanwhile, President John Dramani Mahama has condemned the unauthorized leakage of confidential documents related to the petition. This development follows the submission of 3 separate petitions, 2 dated February 14, 2025, and a third from March 17, 2025, all seeking the Chief Justice's removal from office. In an official communication signed by the Secretary to the President, Dr. Callistus Mahama, the Presidency outlined the next steps in this unprecedented constitutional process. Quote, His Excellency wishes to assure the Chief Justice that due process will be followed in handling this matter. End quote, Mahama stated, emphasizing that the judicial leader will receive, quote, a full and fair opportunity to be heard. The letter highlights the delicate nature of the proceedings, noting that the President had already consulted the Council of State chaired by former Speaker Doaja, who was required by Article 1466 of Ghana's 1992 Constitution. The consultation took place on March 24, with the Council providing its response just 3 days later on March 27. However, the proceedings have been overshadowed by controversy following the unauthorized circulation of confidential documents. The Presidency expressed deep disappointment that the Chief Justice's March 27 correspondence had appeared on social media platforms before the official channels could properly process it. Quote, we are constrained to mark each page of attachments as restricted, end quote, President Mahama declared, referencing the Supreme Court's precedent in the Frank Ajechum vs. Attorney General case, which establishes strict confidentiality for such proceedings. So it is that particular document, very brief, concise, sent to the Council of State that has formed the basis of many discussions, including the Chief Justice even writing to the President saying, I want copies of a petition. Turns out she had nothing to worry about because it looks like the Presidency were just considering sending her the petition when she actually put out that letter. It was not the only thing that happened because there were 2 cases filed in which it was being alleged that the Chief Justice had not seen copies of the petition and that the Chief Justice the Constitution gives her the right to see those petitions before a prima facie case is made against her. So we'll be discussing that issue, the petitions that are seeking the removal of the Chief Justice. And then we'll also be staying with matters of law because there's also another issue, this one involving the immediate boss of the National Signals Bureau. The details are revealed on Monday morning, and since then, it has been the subject of discussion. Like I said, 2 stories from Graphic. Their story today, it's tomorrow, March 28th, says court revises bail conditions for former National Signals Bureau Director General Edu Boahen and wife. And the story is that the High Court in Accra has revised the police inquiry bail conditions granted to the immediate past Director General of the National Signals Bureau, formerly the Bureau of National Communications, Commissioner Edu Boahen, and his wife Angela J. Boateng, who are being held on suspicion of causing financial loss to the state. Presiding over the case, Justice Ruby Aite reduced Mr. Edu Boahen's police inquiry bail from 120 million Ghana cedis to 80 million Ghana cedis with 2 sureties, one of whom must provide justification. His wife's 80 million Ghana cedis bail bond was maintained, but the new conditions now require 2 sureties with no justification. Additionally, the couple must report to the Economic and Organized Crimes Office twice a week for the next 3 weeks and are prohibited from traveling without express permission from Yoko. The review followed an application by the couple's legal counsel, Samuel Atacha, who moved the motion before the court today. They've been held at Yoko for some time, and I'm sure you've heard the reason that investigation is ongoing. They are not the only ones, actually. There's, I think, a 3rd suspect whose name has really not come up. It regards a contract to buy cyber defense equipment for National Signals Bureau during his time there, Commissioner Edu Boahen's time there. Turns out, and there's the allegation from Yoko, that he channeled the money for the payment for the equipment through a private bank account he created. In the end, he paid the real vendors of the equipment just a little over $1 million and kept the rest and kept withdrawing it. That's the allegation that the Yoko has made. So we'll spend some time discussing that at our second discussion. And then the third one, we'll move to the energy sector, because the finance minister has been speaking. He said we need 2.5 billion monthly to pay our energy bills. ECG raises 1.3 billion, which means government has to find 1.2 billion. He says currently he needs about $1.1 billion to pay ENI this year alone. And there are many others that are lined up that they have to find money to deal with. And he says that will take some painful corrections in order for those debts to be paid. So we're talking about the energy sector debts and what needs to be done to make it easier for us to pay those debts, especially in the wake of even the ECG coming under intense scrutiny. Because 2,500 containers, they find only over 1,200. We can't account for the rest. They said they found some 44, but that is nothing close to 1,000. So there are many containers that are missing, that the minister was going to raise 1.5 billion to pay for demurrage for, but finds out that even the containers, the numbers are not up to. So we'll be talking about the energy sector there to conclude today's discussion. And joining me in the studio for today's discussion, Hamza is a member of the communications team of the National Democratic Congress. And he's also someone who has the authority to practice as a lawyer both in the UK and Ghana. Good morning.
Good morning, my brother. Yeah. And of course, good morning to my colleagues in the studio and our cherished viewers. And to some extent, listeners of Radio Good out there. And like he indicated, I think I share in his opinion. Alaji Sena. It's been a while.
Well, the last time there was somebody called Alaji on this show was Alaji Alasan Suhina. I don't think I'm qualified. Osman Alasan is a private legal practitioner. We join us to complete a panel for today to discuss the issues that we've tabled. Once again, your views are very, very important. Do join us on Facebook. Use the comment section. On YouTube, use the comment section. Then you can use the number that will be displayed on the screen. Send a text message. Send a WhatsApp message to us and share your comments with us. We'll start with from the matter of the removal of the Chief Justice and the petitions. Let's start from there because it's virtually the latest issue that has attracted a lot of discussion. So we'll start from that one. And I'll start with Hamza Suini because that falls right under their domain. And Hamza.
Good morning once again, Sam. I think that there is the need for us to situate that discussion and premise it on the holistic agenda or proposals the NDC submitted to the Ghanaian people in the last election. You remember that one of the cardinal policies or principles that the NDC touted and sold to the Ghanaian people to a very large extent had to do with the issue of accountability. Because as a country, we had all agreed that there were many things that were going on in this country that we considered unacceptable. Indeed, many Ghanaians voted the NDC into power not just because of a desire to change the occupants of the Jubilee House. They agreed that based on the legacy of bad governance that was left by His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo and Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, there was the need for us to clean the system. Their governance was so bad to such an extent that it affected almost every fiber of our national existence. From the judiciary to our state institutions, and here I make direct references to state-owned enterprises, where on daily basis we woke up to troubling news of allegations of corruption. Same could be said in terms of ministers. Many of our institutions were engulfed in issues of corruption, and albeit sometimes even abuse of power, flagrant abuse of state power. So when the Ghanaian people gave their mandate to His Excellency John Dramani Mahama and the National Democratic Congress, it was not simply a desire to change the occupants of the Jubilee House. They knew that with the NDC and His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, they were entrusting in them to act as agents of change, to be able to bring about change into every fiber of our national existence. So if the NDC today is in power, it is largely because of that confidence. And we must appreciate that. And for me, interestingly, Ghanaians seem to have bought into the advice of His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo when he indicated that Ghanaians needed to stop being passive and be active players in national governance. So today we have President Mahama, who has become the agent of the Ghanaian people in bringing about that change. But the Ghanaian people have also not gone to bed. They appreciate that the election of President Mahama and the NDC into office is not enough to rewrite the wrongs that seem to have engulfed our state institutions, and that they need to continue to be active in that process so that their agent of change can bring about that change. There's so much desire. That is what informed, in my opinion, the petitions against the Chief Justice of the Republic of Ghana. So for those who think that this is masterminded by the National Democratic Congress or His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, must begin to have a rethink. Because even if President Mahama and the NDC should decide to stand on the way of the Ghanaian people, their quest for accountability and for change, Sana, be rest assured that the Ghanaian people will come at them. They cannot stand on the way of change. So we must understand that. President Mahama and the NDC, they have little option than to respond positively to the demands of the Ghanaian people. And so when they are doing that, or when the presidency is engaged in doing so, it is not politics as usual, and it is not a hidden vendetta against the Chief Justice, and for that matter, the judiciary as an institution. It is simply a clarion call for accountability by the good people of this country, of which the Chief Justice herself must be more than willing to subject herself to the processes. It does not mean that when she is subjected to those processes, she automatically will be taken out as Chief Justice. She may come out free, vindicated if you like, or actually found guilty. So it is simply a screening process of ensuring accountability, of which every state actor, public servant must not shy away from. Now, having laid the political basis and democratic grounds of this demand, let me move swiftly to the legalities. Senna, the processes for the removal of the Chief Justice is enshrined in our Constitution under Article 146. Clearly stated, and it's not just about the Chief Justice. If you look specifically at Clause 3 of Article 146, it gives you the processes that we need to consider or to go through when we want to remove a Superior Court judge. Now, one interesting thing about that point has to do with the issue of establishing a prima facie case. It is clearly stated under Clause 3, Article 146, that when it comes to the removal of a Superior Court judge, the Chief Justice ought to establish a prima facie case before a committee is then proceeded to be set, for the committee to also take it up from that angle. But interestingly, when you go to Clause 6 of Article 146, references have not been made to the establishment of prima facie case. So those who are reading the Constitution literally would be forgiven to conclude that when it comes to the removal of the Chief Justice, you do not require the establishment of a prima facie case. But one thing I know you know is that when it comes to constitutional interpretation, there's what we call the purposive approach to interpretation. Fortunately, the law was tested in that regard as to whether indeed when it comes to the removal of a Chief Justice, there's the need for the President to establish a prima facie case before the committee is set. And in the case of Ajetum and Attorney General, the Supreme Court held, in fact, it was elaborately done and beautifully crafted by the late Dr. Datiba, where he indicated that when it comes to the Chief Justice also, because the Chief Justice is first a Superior Court judge, you must equally establish a prima facie case before it is referred to a committee that will be set up in consultation with the Council of State. Aladi Sena, it is important to note, because of your address, it is important to note that in reaching a prima facie case, Dr. Datiba was clear that that decision has to be taken by the President in consultation with the Council of State. So what it means is that though the President is clothed with the legal authority to take that decision, he is not expected to take that decision alone. It must be a dual responsibility between the President and the Council of State. So today, if the presidency, if petitions have been filed at the presidency, and the President receives those petitions, the first act of responsibility in line with the judgment in Ajetum and the Attorney General, the President ought to first communicate to the Council of State that these are the petitions that I have received, so that the Council of State is in the know that there are petitions before them to consider. When that first step is exhausted, the President together with the Council of State will now officially write to inform the Chief Justice that these are the petitions we have against you. Can we have your initial comments before we proceed to determine whether a prima facie case has been established or not? So for me, I was hugely disappointed in the conduct of the Chief Justice when she decided to jump the gun by officially writing to the President to demand copies of the petition. The President could not have given her copies of the petition without first giving that petition to the Council of State. This country is a country of institutions. So the Council of State needed to know that in the first place we have petitions. Then based based on the outcome of consultations, they then write to the Chief Justice to demand her initial comments. So it is not as if the presidency was never going to bring these petitions to the attention of the Chief Justice. Absolutely not. But my investigations reveal that in the past, it was done haphazardly. The president, the ex-president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, upon receiving the first petition against the Chief Justice, decided to turn the rules upside down by first of all giving those petitions to the Chief Justice before even proceeding to furnish those petitions to the Council of State. So, possibly, that's why she was expectant that that irregularity will be followed by this government. But what she forgot was that this is a government that promised to reset the system, and we cannot afford to be making such fundamental errors when it comes to the rule of law. So we appreciate that indeed to establish a prima facie case, we may need her initial comments. So today, I can tell you in all sincerity and honesty that the case that was sponsored behind the scenes by the Chief Justice using Asafua and the former Attorney General clearly has become moot. If they were patient, if they were meticulous, they would have come to the realization that this is not a government that is willing to sidestep the rule of law simply to pursue political aims. For me, that is my disappointment. My second disappointment stems from the fact that even in her official correspondence to the president, the Chief Justice decided to leak these official letters. That could be another potential charge against her, especially when a committee is finally formed. And some of these things are worrying. One would have expected her to have known better as someone presiding over our judicial institution today. That level of secrecy when it comes to official correspondence is crucial. But she decided to make a letter meant for the president public, even before the president could read the contents of that letter. Who does that? Who does that? So these are some of the fundamental issues we must be asking. Today, many Ghanaians raise concerns about impartiality in the past as far as the judiciary and its activities are concerned. Senna, is it therefore not strange and in some way given credence to the concerns of Ghanaians that under Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo and the current Chief Justice, there were certain underhand dealings between the judiciary that is supposed to be independent and the executive, when today, out of the many lawyers we have in the country, they decided to use the very Attorney General that was being accused of being in bed with this current Chief Justice to be the official person to fight the cause of the current Chief Justice. What does that tell you? Do you now need an angel to descend from heaven to tell you that possibly there could be some truth in the allegations that were being raised by the Ghanaian people? And we all know that when it comes to strategy, the former Attorney General lacks it. Because if he had any idea of how to be strategic, I'm sure he would have been hesitant even in engaging with, if you like, what's the name? Defense witnesses in a case that he was handling against them without their lawyers. I'm making reference here to the case of Jekwa and Atufosin, where he decided to unethically go out of his way to engage Jekwa just to get him to formulate some lies against the Honorable Atufosin. So this is the kind of person we are dealing with. So for me, when the incident happened, I came to one conclusion. Perhaps, undoubtedly, God seemed to be on the side of the Ghanaian people. That is why some of these petty mistakes seem to be coming up. To simply give credence to the fact that indeed there were so many things that were happening under the former Attorney General and of course the current Chief Justice. And that is worrying, and to a very large extent the NPP. So I have absolute confidence in the ability of our Council of State to provide the needed advice to His Excellency the President to handle this matter in line with our constitutional dictates. It is not for nothing that the composition of the Council of State requires the inclusion of certain people, including a former Chief Justice. And you cannot have the likes of Sophia Akufo-Addo, as he then was, being part of an institution that can be taken for granted. Mind you, for those of us who are in the legal fraternity and have had the opportunity of reading her judgments, in the past, I used to say that you may decide to disagree with her perceived political leanings. But when it comes to the industry, her intellect, especially when it comes to decisions from the Supreme Court, you simply could not help but admire her industry. So I have absolute confidence in her fidelity to the principles of rule of law and to our 1992 Constitution. And I know that people like her cannot be taken for a ride. And if President Mahama had an interest in being driven politically to take decisions, be rest assured that we could have found an intelligent way of not including her as part of the Council of State. But we did not, because it is about the national interest. And I have always argued that if you are looking for a president who privileges the national interest over and beyond his partisan interest, and you look beyond President John Dramani Mahama, then you would have a difficulty finding one. Because he's demonstrated it all his political career. There were instances, even in opposition as a member of parliament, where his utterances did not find favor with his own political party. Those facts are there. Again, we are talking about the sitting president who had the courage to prosecute his own members of parliament, or former members of parliament, and political appointees. You simply cannot make reference to a sitting president under the fourth Republican Constitution with that courage and record, except President Mahama. So clearly, Alhaji Sena, if we are dealing with this same gentleman, the Chief Justice ought to be rest assured that it is the rule of law that would govern the entire process. But her conduct gives legitimate basis for some of us to call on His Excellency the President and the Council of State to exercise the option of suspension that again can be found in clause 10 of Article 146 when it comes to the role of the Chief Justice, especially after they establish a prima facie case. Why am I saying so? If you look at the Constitution, it gives the presidency the authority, in consultation again with the Council of State, after a prima facie case has been determined and a committee formed, to proceed to suspend the Chief Justice. And I'm saying that her current conduct justifies that suspension if indeed they establish a prima facie case. Because you simply imagine if it had to do with you, Senna, who had an issue against the system, would you have gotten the date the Chief Justice managed to get for the likes of Asafua and what's his name, the former Attorney General, to appear simply because they have brought a writ to the Supreme Court? Doctor, would you have gotten that speedy allocation of a day for a hearing? Absolutely not. So that act alone, that conduct alone, tells us that if she is going to be left there after a prima facie case has been established against her, then we must be ready for her to begin to influence the processes to protect her office. And that must not be countenanced. On that note, let me assure the good people of this country that the National Democratic Congress is not up in arms against the Chief Justice. His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama is not up in arms against the Chief Justice. The people of Ghana elected President Mahama as an agent of change, and they are demanding change in our public institutions through that election. And even His Excellency President Mahama cannot stand on the way of the people's demand for accountability. He must honor same. So if the bell of accountability comes to your doorstep, all you need to do is to ensure that you are able to answer their questions satisfactorily, and the laws of this republic will protect you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. In fact, some of the issues you're raising, there was he rarely writes. That's lawyer Tadio Sorry. Occasionally, when certain things come to his attention, he decides to write about it. And these are the issues he raises with one, Honourable Member of Parliament Vicente Sefua's suits, the former AG's involvement, and then the CJ then releasing that statement. Or that letter that was supposed to be sent to the presidency, that letter then circulating. There's no evidence that it was the CJ who leaked it anyway, but it was in the public domain. He had something to say about that and some questions that he raises. He says, let me find that briefly and just read that through to you. And these are the thoughts of lawyer Tadio Sorry, who raises these questions about. It says this claim raises a number of intriguing. Okay, so first, Mr. Sefua argues that the president is required under Article 1461, 2, 4, 6, and 7, 23, 57, 3, and 296 of the Constitution to, quote, notify the Chief Justice about a petition for a removal and obtain her comments and responses before referring the petition to the Council of State or commencing consultation with the Council of State. This claim raises a number of intriguing questions. At the time, I think the Chief Justice's letter had not been made public. So he raises question number one. How did Mr. Sefua, within just one day, ascertain that the Chief Justice was not consulted before the petitions were referred to the Council of State? Two, did the Chief Justice personally inform him that she was not consulted? Three, was there any media report confirming that the Chief Justice had been bypassed in the process? Those are the three. Then he continues, and Godfrey Dami as his lawyer, as the musician Joseph of Culture says, this is neither a jigsaw nor a puzzle. Things are falling into place. We either survive together or perish together. And just after putting this out, and many other lawyers commenting, then the Chief Justice's letter surfaced, as if to justify the basis for that suit being filed in court. So then you see a point where she's saying, I've handled this process before, and the way I handled it is that when I'm establishing the prima facie case, I give the person who's been accused the opportunity to be heard. So I think that using my own process, you should use my process and give me the opportunity to get. That's the I think when you read the letter, that's the impression you get.
Yes, but can I come in? Yes, first of all, I think that just to respond to some of the concerns raised in terms of the submission of my senior here, as to who makes that decision of establishing prima facie, I think that it was stated clearly that that decision is to be made by the president in consultation with the Council of State. And if you permit me just to read excerpts, that Ibar says the prima facie determination is to be made by the president in consultation with the Council of State. So that point, the judgment clearly, specifically addressed that point as to who makes it. Now it brings me to the second question of how it is to be made. And for me, if there was anything that would have gotten out of this case of Asafua MP, probably it would have been that determination as well. Because in actual sense, even if you look at clause 3, article 146, even though reference is made to the establishment of prima facie, we really have never had the opportunity in our jurisprudence to reach the conclusion as to how to make that determination. All what we are doing is to rely on other principles to make assumptions, but there's really no legal backing as to how we can reach a prima facie case. And for some strange reason, that was the reason why I was hoping that maybe we'd get an opportunity to test the law in terms of how to reach that decision. Because, Senna, for some, objectively speaking, I am one of the people who hold the view that fair initial commentary, especially considering the allegations against the Chief Justice, initial commentary is important and must constitute a critical aspect in terms of reaching that determination of prima facie. And I'll explain why. Senior counsel made reference to the issue of criminal prosecutions and the fact that no case can be filed. I agree. But one thing we miss is that even before the police go to court, the accused has an opportunity of writing a witness statement or a statement, police statement. Based on that statement, it will inform the police whether to continue to investigate or, if you like, to even proceed to court based on what they have. For me, I feel that the police reaches that determination by looking at the allegation and the statement of the accused. That is an establishment of a prima facie case as far as the police service is concerned. And it is based on that that they proceed to court. When it is submitted or presented before a judge, and the defense, after listening to the prosecution side, decides to file a submission of no case, they adduce evidence to demonstrate why they feel that no case has been made out for them to answer. It is these two sides that the judge may consider in actually reaching a determination of whether indeed there is a case to answer or not to answer. So again, in reaching whether there has been a prima facie case that warrants further investigation, the judge gets the opportunity to listen to both sides. Okay. If the judge says no to it, then you proceed to full trial, where the defense would have an opportunity to present its elaborate defense. It is true that the judge on his own can reach a decision that, look, you have not met the evidence threshold, the prosecution, for you to be able, for me to continue with the case. But remember that all that decision would have been made with due reference to the statement made by the accused when he was before the police.
Okay.
Having said that, it is on the basis of that I believe, and I find absolutely nothing wrong in the decision of the president to give her the opportunity to respond. You see, Senna, we have absolutely nothing to lose. Because you see, the danger, sometimes the law can be funny, even in our workplaces. When a query is issued to you, it is not for nothing that they issue it. They give you the opportunity to respond to it. Then the assessor or the one who will evaluate your response, if he deems it appropriate to go on to further investigate, then they go ahead. Your response might end it. And the person will conclude that, look, the prima facie has not been established for us to even go further. We drop it. And when we are talking about the Chief Justice of the Republic of Ghana, because of the issue of separation of powers and independence, I do not think that it serves any of us if we conclude that in the establishment of a prima facie, it is not necessary to have an initial comment. That would be a dangerous precedent. I hold a view. I know that there are many people, even in my political party, who are lawyers, who do not disagree with that view, who just feel like, look, the president is not entitled. I feel that it should be a crucial part of the whole process. Okay. Because anybody at all can wake up and put a bunch of convincing allegations together and proceed to present it before the president, and a president minded to pursue political agenda would conclude in saying that, look, I have established a prima facie case against you. Today the NDC is in power. Tomorrow it could be any other political party. Okay. So we must have standards that we must seek to jealously guard. And for me, that is why I feel that this important decision by His Excellency the President to give him the opportunity, to give her the opportunity to respond, is fair. Okay. So it is based on her response. And mind you, another interesting thing is that it is not for nothing that... but under a minute. It is also interesting. You see, where she's seated, the information she is privileged to have, the petitioners might not have that information. The evidence that she can bring aboard in her response, the petitioners may not have access to that evidence. Because remember, she's a Chief Justice. So they may be able to put up a petition based on what they have heard or what they have experienced. But a chunk of the documentation might be in her bosom. In her response, she might think that she's presenting hardcore evidence to rebut their proposal because she would make evidence available in her initial response. It is that evidence, probably a scrutiny of that evidence, that would convince the President and the Council of State that there is the need for me to look into these issues further, which would have led to a beautiful establishment of the prima facie. So that is my view on it. Yes, it is not supported by any jurisprudence at this stage, largely because we don't have a determination by our courts saying that this should be the standard. But I think that it is in our interest for us to have such fair tests.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. If I can correct my brother, I like the zeal. But you see, in the criminal process, an accused person is not under a duty to even file a witness statement. If he does so, it's onerous.
Now I'm talking about the police station.
Yes, yes. The police or the prosecution is always under a duty to prove beyond reasonable doubt of the guilt of the accused person. That's number one. Now, number two, the witness statement itself does not constitute evidence until it is submitted under oath. So the fact that it is submitted is not giving evidence contrary to what the prosecution is putting in, you see. And so I use that to explain the distinction. I just use that to explain the distinction between what we mean by prima facie case and reasonable course of action.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. We'll move to the next issue shortly. It also still relates to matters in courts. The quite an interesting case. If you listen to it for the first time, and the allegations from Yoko, what their investigations have established thus far, you forget yourself, maybe open your mouth and be shocked at exactly what happened and the things that have been communicated. But Atachian, from all my sources at Yoko, they tell me that he was never a lawyer from the very beginning. They knew a different lawyer. There was another person who was representing the people. That's why they were surprised initially when he put out the statement. They were even shocked. They were like, the only time they've seen him is that one, even the bosses at Yoko heard of it later, that he had come to see the deputy director of Yoko. Yeah, but Raymond was busy, and so he stayed for quite a while and decided to leave.
Oh, so he didn't
even have that interaction. So you don't know him as a lawyer in the case, but it brings a very interesting it brings a very interesting perspective when he started saying that he feels that Attorney General shouldn't have even disclosed the matter the way in which he did. That he thinks that those should be done in court and not through the public domain. Anyway, so we'll talk about that shortly, especially in the wake of the fact that even the court has decided that the 120 million, they reduce it to 80 million for both of them. But a few comments on our area on Facebook. This one's Eriko Kusepen, who agrees actually with Dr. Inusa that you are right in your submission on the Council of State because they had outlived its usefulness and a drain on the public purse. And then we saw the acts of commission and omission. Bernard Keabua says, witch hunting is not a good thing if it has been established that there's a witch, because everyone knows that witches are enemies. Witch hunting is like spraying mosquitoes with insecticide. There's Musa Abato says, MPP's response to the Chief Justice removal is about the political maneuvering than about upholding the law. The attempt to create confusion with the legal acrobatics only undermines the integrity of the process. If the Chief Justice and the MPP have nothing to hide, why the reluctance to follow the established procedures. The removal of a former EC boss was handled without all the fuss. President Mahama has done the needful by following the petition to the Council of State. Let's not allow political games to muddy the waters. Edmund Mensah, Senator, the Chief Justice has seen the red lights based on her own conscience. And so I started requesting for a petition against her. Otherwise, why the rush? She should just start packing. After all, she was part of the people who rendered our birth certificates useless. Tom says the CJ from the one has acted unfaithfully. She got herself in a banter with the speaker, and now he's started a banter with the president. How on earth to NDC government under GM accommodate her? She must go. There's Ak Endos Kwanzaa, a very brilliant submission. You one day become okay. He's commending somebody else that sent a message, not. Oh, well, okay. So we'll move on to the issue of Kobina Edubuahin's arrest, and I start again with Hamza.
We have to leave shortly before the.
Okay.
Maybe after the submission.
Okay.
Again, Alaji Sena. I was telling that my brother Atik is uncomfortable when references is made to promises that were made before the. And I respect that view, and I think I share in it. But the overarching principle is that whichever way you look at it, the people demanded accountability through the last election. They were fed up. Their quest for accountability had implications on almost every sector of our national life. And that is why I made the point that His Excellency President Mahama, as president, cannot even stand on the way of the people's demand for accountability, because it could result in his own presidency being questioned. And if you are not careful, may God forbid, the people may rise up against his presidency as well. And I still believe that it is in the spirit of fulfilling that mandate that the people on daily basis wake up expecting to hear, that the government they have elected into office to demand accountability and to ensure that we nip corruption in the bud is actually living up to expectation. But you see, if you look at these cases, from Edu Buahini to the $2 million SkyTrain and to the National Service scandal, one thing is in common: the reckless handling of the national purse, considering the volumes involved. And I have always said that it appears that under the last administration, this country was reduced, the public purse of this country was reduced to an illegal mining site where political appointees woke up on daily basis, engage in the illegal mining of our meager resources for their personal comfort. That appeared to be sanctioned, unfortunately, by the executive. Why do I say so? Because even if a minister of state is accused of corruption and has been taken through the processes of investigation, and the number one gentleman of the land, or ought to be gentleman of the land, decides to write a love letter expressing absolute confidence that such an appointee would come out clean, it tells you the kind of system we have. But you see, Senna, one important pillar of the promises we made to the good people of this country was not just the issue of accountability, but to a very large extent, the issue of transparency. Because it is not enough for you to pursue accountability without being transparent yourself. So the Ghanaian people, we owe it to the Ghanaian people to keep them informed every step of the way about the steps we are taking to rid this country of corruption and corrupt public servants. And I have always argued, I've heard my colleagues from the other side complain that the press conferences the Attorney General held, that particular press conference was needless and blah, 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 blah. He proceeded to try Edu Buahin in the media and stuff like that. Senna, again, if you look at our laws, the Attorney General is also the minister responsible for justice, senior, who I got that right. An analysis of his role should tell you that he's not just being the #1 legal advisor to the president, he's also doubling as a political appointee with responsibilities. So as Minister for Justice, he's enjoined, in line with democratic tenets of transparency, to keep the good people of this country aware of the steps he seemed to be taking in his quest to ensure accountability as far as the fight against corruption is concerned and any other related activity that squarely falls within the ambit of the Attorney General's department. But it appears our colleagues are of the view that because he's Attorney General, he should neglect his duties as Minister for Justice, which is political in nature, by keeping the people informed as to the activities that the Ministry of Justice is engaged in our collective interest. But again, what is even more nauseating is their level of hypocrisy. Remember that when he assumed office and decided to discontinue with some of the cases, my senior is here. When you file a nolle prosequi, the Attorney General is not obliged or obligated in any way to give reasons. Am I right? I hope I got that right. Alhaji Sana, he's not obligated to give reasons as to why a nolle prosequi has been filed. But the same Afenyo Marking, after those processes were exhausted, was the very person demanding explanation as to why the Attorney General proceeded to file a nolle prosequi in a number of cases, and for which reason explanation ought to be forthcoming. At the time he made those demands on the Attorney General, he did not know as a lawyer that indeed he was not obligated to have provided those pieces of information. He knew. But in the spirit of transparency, the Attorney General, as Minister of Justice, proceeded to respond to his request by explaining why some of those cases had to be dropped. The same Attorney General, in that spirit of transparency, has conducted an investigation, has reached a certain stage of the investigation. Arrests were made, and you, the same Attorney Afenyo Martin, raised concerns about those arrests and said that the country was engaged in arresting people by hand. Once again, calling for a response from the Minister of Justice. And he responds by telling you why the likes of Buahini was arrested and the stage their investigations have gotten to. And you proceed to say that he's engaged in media trials? What level of hypocrisy is that? So these are the facts. And as for the content of the allegations being made, it is troubling. Remember that the National Signal Bureau was, before its current form, was the BNC, Bureau of National Communications. Then you have a director of the Bureau deciding at the comfort of his house to clone the former BNC to make it look as though any other activity related to it still has the semblance of the previous BNC. Created a company, made himself a director, and that of the wife. So even the first point that we must be concerned about is that the decision to clone the Bureau of National Communications as BNC was in itself, it was done with a criminal intent. How could you possibly think of something like this if you didn't have any criminal intent? As if that was not enough. You decided to sign a contract on behalf of this country in the name of purchasing a cyber security software, using that cloned company that you man with your wife, and paid in excess of $6 million, I'm told $7 million into that company's account. Then went behind with your wife again to withdraw those monies to invest in real estate and bought houses, about 37 houses, and we are still counting. Using the seven
in a day.
In a day. You see, Sana, are you therefore surprised when President Mahama couldn't help but conclude that this country was being run as an economic crime scene? Was an economic crime scene? Because this is just a tip of the iceberg. We are told by the Attorney General. These were the things happening in this country. And when I read the response, the media response of his counsel, I was shocked. Interestingly, they decided to respond to every other issue about the arrest, but failed to deny allegations leveled against the said gentleman, who in himself was a political appointee in any case. Senator, that is not all. This is a gentleman who was presiding over a sensitive asset in our country, National Signals Bureau. What it means is that any of us could have been monitored. Any of us, irrespective of your status in life. Any of us. So we must actually even be interested in other dealings outside this national cyber security software pitches. Whether at any point he used his role to bully other people in this country and to extort monies from them. It is important for us to go into such investigations. Because if he had the courage to do something like that, clearly, you do not rule out the possibility of using that power to bully other citizens.
Please wrap up for me.
In wrapping up, all I can say is that this is just a tip of the iceberg. Every Ghanaian who has information about the operations, and you see, finally, before I even forget, we are told that by the Deputy Attorney General that when the information about his arrest got to his wife, the wife started cutting dollars or suspected currency into suitcases and was caught on camera. Yes, that was the information that was made known yesterday in court by the Deputy Attorney General. So that should tell you the criminality that engulfed this country in the last 8 years. And we have not actually even started investigations into the so-called digitization, the naming of, the numbering of our houses and streets. We have not started. We've not gone there yet. My goodness God. So, as a country, the greatest thing to have happened to us was the outcome of the elections in December last year. Only God knows what this country would have been subjected to under another 4 years of Nana Bawumia. An absolute mess.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. PENDREAM TV really appreciates your time on the channel, and once again says God bless you for the wonderful work you are doing and continue to do for us. Wherever you are watching us from, we say God bless you for having time for us anytime, any day. God richly bless you once again. Stay tuned for more. You have more in store coming your way, and you cannot afford to miss out. Please just stay glued to the channel by subscribing for more video and turning the notification bell on. Thank you.
PENDREAM TV now, so far so good. Say open online portal e Ghana. Nipa share, nipa follow, nipa comment here. To my best of knowledge, without any biases, PENDREAM TV.